Thank you, Rachel. I'm John Schoberg, Chief of Fisheries at the Nevada Department of Wildlife. I also sit on the coordinating committee. Using that same history as a guide, I want to share with you the threats to LCT and its current status. In terms of numbers of LCT, there are about 72 self-sustaining LCT populations distributed through approximately 10% of its historical range, shown in dark blue. However, only a dozen or so occur in interconnected stream systems and/or are resilient. Simply stated, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service defines resiliency as the ability to sustain populations through the natural range of favorable and unfavorable conditions. We will touch on this more later today. The remaining 60 or so LCT populations are generally isolated within headwater streams and are vulnerable to extirpation in the near future without active management, like adding new fish to the population. This is because the habitat is too small and/or there are not enough fish within the degraded habitat to maintain the population through the rough times. As mentioned above, challenges remain in addressing the presence of non-native trout and habitat loss and degradation. Non-native trout are the single greatest threat to LCT. Species such as rainbow, brown, brook, and lake trout have been stocked in waters across the West since the late 1800s to provide opportunities for recreational fishing. Unfortunately, many introductions were made on top of native LCT populations. These trout are not native to the Lahontan Basin and impact the native LCT through hybridization because rainbow trout can breed with LCT and produce hybridized trout. Competition because brook trout invade extant populations and can displace and compete with LCT, and depredation because non-native lake and brown trout will eat young or small Lahontan cutthroat trout. Cumulatively, these impacts resulted in the near loss of LCT across its historical range, resulting in its listing, and they continue to hinder the recovery of our state's fish. The other significant and ongoing threat to LCT is habitat loss, fragmentation, and degradation. We have dramatically altered riparian habitats throughout the West as a result of, or to directly benefit, land and resource uses including mining, grazing, logging, oil and gas extraction, power generation, and recreation. Some of the current issues are a result of ongoing land use practices that continue in areas that were heavily impacted from legacy uses in the distant past. Landscapes in the Great Basin can take decades to recover. And current inappropriate land use practices further exacerbate the degradation that already exists in our great state. As a result, these threats remain present within nearly all currently suitable LCT habitat. The main habitat-related issues present today are due to dams, diversions, inappropriate livestock grazing, fire, mining, and a lack of wild horse management. The only way to recover LCT is to manage these key threats: non-native trout and habitat loss and degradation. And the only way for us to be successful in managing these threats is by collaborating in meaningful ways that we previously have not been very good at. In the eastern portion of the historic range of LCT, which is our focus here today, there are two areas where we want to highlight important progress because it represents the sorts of projects that need to continue to occur in order for us to delist LCT. Those projects I'm going to speak to are the North Fork of the Humboldt River and the Upper Reese River. First, the North Fork Humboldt River effort is an ongoing project nearing completion. Over the last several years, non-native trout have been removed from the main stem of this system, making it possible to reconnect it to several tributaries without the threat of non-natives spreading. This will result in an interconnected, resilient LCT population within the next few years. And secondly, another example we would like to highlight today is the Upper Reese River effort. This project aims to remove non-native trout from the Upper Reese River to allow for the formation of an interconnected, resilient LCT population and is targeted to be completed within the next 5 years.